Advice, a turning point in the Salem witch trials. Salem Village Church, how do you do? My name is Ann Putnam, and I was one of the afflicted children involved in the witch hysteria of 1692. I have requested of Reverend Green to allow me to present myself to you today, August 25th, 1706, to tell you of my knowledge of the event, as well as formally apologize for my involvement in the conviction of the dead, and to show you how one man, Cotton Mather, and his advice, saved an already hysteric colony from plunging into further mass murder, all with the hopes of being received into full communion. The village had been very cold that winter, in terms of people as well as weather. A village just settled in 1626, Salem had recently been violently attacked by Indians, sending people into a terrific frenzy of sorts. Children who had seen their dear parents murdered before their eyes now roamed the village as orphans. Men would not sow the field lest they be comforted by the presence of some malicious weapon. Farmers began bickering about whose acreage extended to where, particularly my father along with the Coreys and Jacobses. The whole village was utterly on edge. As if that social dysfunction were not enough, our village was adjusting to its fourth minister since settlement. You see, many people would pick quarrels with the ministers, even leading to the arrest of Reverend George Burroughs. Though 6 villagers did bail him out, but on this he left. Before him was Reverend James Bailey, the village's first minister as of 1672, and after Burroughs was Reverend Deodat Lawson, who also left as the result of an argument. 'Twas a miracle Samuel Parris even took the job, though I suspect he too began to have his doubts. People claimed they saw no light of God in him and bravely voiced it so. It were his Tituba, whom he brought with him from Barbados, who first introduced us to the black arts at the hand of Satan. I, along with Betty Parris and Abigail Williams, among others, listened giddily as Tituba spun us tales of voodoo and magic. We engaged in fortune-telling by cracking eggs into glasses of water and attempting to make sense of the shapes the oaks made, for Tituba told us that these shapes held our future. It were all for sport in the beginning, I assure you. However, you see, we took a great fright when we made out the likeliness of a coffin in the egg yolks. As if some terrible wild beast had come upon us, we began to have severely violent fits. I, along with the other girls who had listened to Tituba's stories, began to complain to our parents and other adults in the village of having great aches and pains. We leapt across rooms and furniture and contorted into grotesque positions. We were hit, picked, stabbed, choked, and had a whole slew of other unpleasantries inflicted upon us by what we convinced the public were some of the villagers themselves. Word of unnatural causes began to spread about the village, and this frightened us. What if we were accused of witchcraft? Rather than being blamed ourselves, we accused others for our afflictive actions. We began by accusing the more slovenly folks of the village, such as Sarah Good and Bridget Bishop, as they were already looked down upon. But as the trials progressed, we gained more authority and found ourselves accusing folks of more upstanding titles, even the governor's wife. The magistrates were convinced that the hundreds of people tried in the court that year were the devil's agents sent to raise up hell. 24 died that year. 19 were hanged, 1 pressed to death, and 4 others died in jail awaiting trial. The madness finally ended when the Court of Oyer and Terminer was formally dissolved on October 29, 1692, due to Governor Phipps's appalled reaction at a letter that Thomas Brattle, a Harvard graduate and merchant at the time, wrote criticizing the nature of the trials. The governor ordered that all spectral or non-visible evidence was no longer valid. With this implemented, accusations dwindled as they were less and less credible. People began to ignore them altogether. As a result of this, the court counted themselves hereby dismissed. Though Goodman Brattle was the first to write a letter to the governor, he was not the first to warn against the use of spectral evidence. Cotton Mather, an influential religious leader of the time, son of Reverend Increase Mather, played a key role in the publicized opinion against the court's trying methods. At the time, Cotton had been the Boston Church's minister, but he had also had experience with the witch trials, as there were cases in Boston as well as Salem. He himself believed that witches did indeed exist and that the world should be rid of them. However, he and his father both agreed that it were better 10 suspected witches should escape than that 1 innocent person should be condemned. His first record of Cotton's advice was in a letter written on May 31st, 1692, to Boston Judge John Richards, who asked of his opinion on the trying methods of the suspected witches. Cotton warned Judge Richards, saying that it would be very likely that devils have sometimes represented the shapes of persons not only innocent, but also very virtuous. He advised Richards to be careful when relying on spectral evidence, for he believed from the start that the spirits of torment may only be disguised devils. He hoped that the judge would realize what was the difference between credibility and what was the result of only a delirious brain or discontented heart, albeit the business of witchcraft be very much transacted upon the stage of imagination. His next warning came on Wednesday, the 15th of June that same year. Governor Phipps asked the local congregational ministers their views on the dealings of the invisible world. The response was Cotton Mather's composition of the return of several ministers. They heeded the severe pain of our afflictions, all while cautioning the use of spectral evidence, lest by too much credulity for things received only upon the devil's authority, there be a long door opened for a long train of miserable consequences. For there may be matters of inquiry which do not amount unto matters of presumption, which yet may not be reckoned matters of conviction. The ministers argued that seeing a ghost was not sufficient proof of evidence, for 'tis an undoubted and notorious thing that a demon may by God's permissions appear even to ill purposes in the shape of an innocent but virtuous man. With this acceptance neglected, the court can end this dreadful calamity with the speedy and vigorous prosecution as have such rendered themselves obnoxious, according to the direction given laws of God and wholesome statutes of the English nation for the detection of witchcrafts. This weighty testimony was not Cotton's last. On August 4th, the afternoon lecture at Harvard was concluded by yet another warning against spectral evidence. Cotton exclaimed that there were too many being accused, and too many of them had led pious lives before. Witches accused of biting were found toothless. The afflicted, which I am ashamed to claim I was, claimed that they saw ghosts, knew the thoughts of their afflictors, and knew what their afflictors wore when they were otherwise unseen. Some thought these were lies, while others believed that if we knew these things, then we must be the witches ourselves, which is the very claim we feared that sent us into this madness. Another letter was written to John Foster, a member of the governor's council who asked for Cotton's advice. Once again, he detested spectral evidence, saying that devils could assume anything or anyone's appearance, even my own. The afflicted could possibly be possessed by the devil rather than being bewitched, as their afflictions seemed to show. It seemed that for the judges to consult us during our fits was for them to potentially consult with ruling devils themselves. In the case of witchcraft, they knew that the devil was the agent in the mischief done, and that the consent or compact of the witch was the thing to be demonstrated. And Cotton's warning was that spectral evidence did not do this. Returning to Thomas Brattle, Mather's spreading influence guided his pen as he composed the crucial letter on October 8, 1692. Governor Phipps, as last receiving a summative illustration of the colony's history of the past year, finally took action against the unlawful trying methods that the court had previously abided to. Without spectral evidence as a case of support, accusations dwindled as they were no longer credited. Because of this, the Salem witch trials came to an end. Governor Phipps wrote a letter to the Earl of Nottingham to inform His Majesty King William at the home government that he had no new complaints, but minds before divided and differing concerning this matter are now well composed. Because of Cotton's advice, the 50 people that were wasting away in jail were then released because their convictions were based on spectral evidence. Because of Cotton's advice, 50 lives were spared. Because of Cotton's advice, the Salem witch trials finally concluded. I'd like to thank you into taking this testimony into full consideration, to accept me into full communion.